The CDC's eviction moratorium is over at the end of July. Millions of Americans who fell behind on rent due to the pandemic could be at risk of being kicked out.
Yeah, Eyewitness News reporter Zach Briggs reports on the potential impacts from renter to the courtroom.
Time is ticking as renters and landlords nationwide wonder what's next, with the federal eviction ban ending July 31st.
There's been, a wave of panic every time these protections start to run out.
Texas housing advocate Christina Rosales urges governments to continue providing protections for renters affected by the coronavirus. Billions of state and federal dollars have poured into communities. She applauds San Antonio and Austin city governments in promoting rental relief programs. But not everyone is taking advantage of the help available.
Rental relief exists, the protections exist, but tenants don't know about their rights. They don't know how to access that relief. And even the landlords aren't certain about the relief that's available to them.
Beyond the information gap is the moratorium's impact on the court system. Attorney Joe Holscher says the mounting backlog of eviction cases could spell problems for landlords.
There is a ton of pressure on the federal government as well as the state government to allow landlords to start clearing out tenants who are not paying them. A small-time landlord who's trying to work their way up the property ladder may be looking at losing everything right now.
As for tenants, there's the prospect of being kicked out once the moratorium ends, but there's the possibility of it being extended once again. Either way, Holscher says it's best to be prepared.
I just urge tenants to be diligent about checking their mail, reading it, and not trying to put off one more problem of the pandemic. They just need to be proactive and make sure they're showing up to court.
Zach Briggs, KENS 5, Eyewitness News.
As I mentioned, you can protect yourself from eviction and get rental assistance. Just go to kens5.com and click on this story to learn how.